Hello, I am
Okay.
Panos Kotzathanasis, and I'm here with Mark Schilling, writer for Japan Times and Variety, and a specialist in Japanese cinema. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
Okay, nice to have you. So, okay, I will begin from the beginning. Let's say, how did you start dealing with cinema, and particularly Japanese cinema, let's say?
Yeah, Japanese cinema goes back a long way because I started watching, Kurosawa, Ozu, that sort of thing in college, and that's like, the late '60s, right? So that was the beginning, and then of course there wasn't all that much Japanese cinema to watch back then. For someone like me, I was studying at the University of Michigan. We had some exposure to Japanese culture and, Asian culture in general, but not a lot. So I had to learn basically everything after I came to Japan.
How many years have you been in Japan now?
Since 1975.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, but tell me a bit about criticism, movie criticism. How do you feel it has changed through the years?
How did I get into it?
Yeah, and how it has changed as a concept, let's say, through the years.
Oh, changed. I see what you mean. Yeah, in the beginning, it was quite a challenge because I had some experience writing about films with another publication, like the sister publication of the Japan Times. They let me write reviews about films with Japanese subtitles, okay, which meant not Japanese films, but like South American films and European films and anything that needed Japanese subtitles. So that was my beginning as a reviewer. So when I started writing about Japanese films, I really didn't have that much experience, as such. I'd seen Japanese films, okay, but writing about them was something different. So I had to do a lot of studying at the beginning, reading other reviewers, just getting a feel of how to write a review. So that was a learning process. It took, the American critic Roger Ebert. He used to write, extensively about all kinds of films, including Japanese films. But he was mainly known as a TV critic in America. He and another critic, Gene Siskel, had a very popular program, going way back. So I was influenced by him quite a bit. His approach to reviewing influenced mine quite a bit. I was a big fan of Pauline Kael, who was the critic of the New Yorker magazine for years and years, going back. She started reviewing in the 1960s when I was a student. So I thought, okay, she's probably the best, but I can't do what she does. Her style of reviewing is, very personal, and trying to imitate her, I just sound like a Pauline Kael wannabe. So I thought, okay, she's someone I admire, but as far as my own reviewing, I better find somebody else. So Roger Ebert, was more of a, he was writing for a big Chicago newspaper. He was, seeing all kinds of films, mainly Hollywood films. And he had to communicate in like 550 words to his readers, what the film was about, of course, his views of it. So he wasn't writing for a cinephile audience. It was more like a general audience. And I thought, that's what I'm doing. So I had to, what can I say, readjust my approach from, the cinephile to something, more general. So I think that's how my own feeling about, writing for, the Japan Times evolved, because, very early on, I realized I'm not writing for like, just, the very few people who like Japanese films. I thought that's, in my own situation, it's not going to work, because who's going to read it? the more readers, the better, right? So I tried to broaden the scope of what I was doing.
Mhm.
So as far as that changed over the years, I mean, I've been doing it for 30 years. So, that was the beginning. And then, of course, journalism changed. The newspaper business changed. And what that meant in my own case was the number of words I had to play around with changed. When I started, I had more than 1,000 words for one review. I just write on and on. But now it's down to 550. It's about what Roger Ebert was writing, way back in the day for his Chicago newspaper. So that, of course, changed my own approach to reviewing, because with 550 words, you don't have a lot to play around with. You have to concentrate, focus, what's important, what's the film really about, and why is it worth watching, or maybe not worth watching.
Do you prefer
Which
this
has its
way?
good points and bad points,
Yeah. And do you prefer this approach or the one with more than 1,000 words? What do you prefer personally?
I think in my own case, sometimes less is better. Sometimes you're becoming, with 1,000 words to play around with, you can become self-indulgent.
Indeed.
You're not thinking about the readers so much. So again, in my case, I'm writing for, people who may not really get beyond the first paragraph. They're not going to see the film. They're just reading me because, they're interested in what I have to say for whatever reason. So just try to keep them reading like one paragraph after another. It's my task as I see it, so sometimes less is better. They say, okay, well, 1,000 words, I can't get through that. 550, yeah, maybe. I'll see it, I'll read it to the end. So yeah, the ideal for me would probably be a happy medium. Like I get to the point where there's more I want to say, but I've exceeded my word limit. So maybe there's a happy medium between 1,000 and 550, right?
But do you still read other people's reviews?
Oh yeah, I do, because you learn. It's a never-ending process. Like the way reviewing is done changes. The way Pauline Kael was doing it back in the day. Not too many people are doing that now. So yeah, if I don't keep up with what people are writing now, then I'm losing out. But on the other hand, I don't want to read what somebody's written about a film I'm going to review. So like a new film comes out, or new Japanese film comes out, and I see somebody else's review pop up first, I say, okay, I better not look at that. You say, okay, I'll just read it for reference, but it never worked out that way, because if they have a good observation, then it kind of, oh, that's right, I agree with that. That kind of filters into your own thinking. So without even trying, you end up plagiarizing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to say plagiarizing. You're not doing it word for word, but the ideas kind of filter in. So it's better just to have my own view initially. Get that down and then see what other people have to say about it.
And you have also written a number of books on Japanese cinema. You have a recent one. Tell me a bit about that.
Books on Japanese cinema?
Yeah, your own.
Yeah, I think the one that influenced me the most in the beginning was Donald Ritchie and Joseph Sanderson book on, Japanese, the Japanese film industry and art and industry, right? Donald was more interested in the art aspect of it, but the industry side was also quite interesting and helpful. Give you a broad overview of how Japanese film developed, going back to the silent days. And of course, they revised that book. It came out about 1959, somewhere around there. And then they revised it like in the early 80s. They tried to bring it up to date to some extent. So when I started, okay, it was still kind of relevant, but it was a very good basis for what I was trying to do. So I still have that in my library.
And what about your own books, the ones you have authored?
My own books? Yeah, I did a count several months ago. How many do I actually have, right? And it came out to 39, I think.
Oh, really?
That I've either written, as the sole author, or I've contributed to, or translated. I've done a few translations too. So yeah, that's it adds up after a while. But yeah, the book that really got me started was on Japanese pop culture. That came out in 1997, and that contained, of course, some film material, about the different. I wrote about Hayao Miyazaki. I hadn't really seen everything that he'd done by that point, but I tried to include him as like a representative of Japanese pop culture at that time, and Kurosawa, then Godzilla, and that sort of thing. So that book was very successful. That it's probably the biggest seller I've ever had. Really got out there. So I thought, the way I'm doing it seems to work, beyond the newspaper level, as a book, So I thought, yeah, maybe keep doing it that way. But after that, I wrote, I compiled my reviews into a book called Contemporary Japanese Film that came out in 1999. And it also included, the interviews I'd done with filmmakers and, essays I'd done on the Japanese film industry, kind of an overview of what was going on from the time I started, 1989 until 1999, 10-year period. And I thought, who's going to read that book? I didn't know at that time, right? But it finally ended up in a lot of university libraries. A lot of people ended up teaching it. People came up to me years later saying, I read that book, it was, influential, whatever. So I thought, yeah, maybe keep doing that. But again, like everything changed. The internet came along, and I thought, who's going to read a compilation of reviews by someone like me? And then a very nice guy named Matthew Chozik came along and said, I'd love to publish that book, the book of all the stuff you've done for the past 20 years, going back to the beginning of the millennium. So that's the, just a second, I have it over here. Okay. Do you have that?
Yeah,
just
yeah.
A second.
Yeah.
Yeah, this book here, right? Right, this book, Art, Cult, and Commerce, Japanese Cinema since 2000, right? So those are my, what can I say, my three big books about Japanese cinema that, cover fairly, broad range. But I've also done other books on, the retrospectives I programmed for the Udine Far East Film Festival, Nikasta Action, the films of Shin Toho, and kaiju films, except for Godzilla. I did a retrospective on that was at Udine, and then later went around the States. So I had to write about that as well. So yeah, I mean, different aspects of Japanese films over the years.
So with all your work, do you feel that there is a need to do a lot of different things in order to be sustain yourself financially? You couldn't just write books or just write for Japan Times, let's say. Exactly.
Yeah, that's say it's unfortunate. I just can't be a full-time reviewer, but that's a reality from the beginning. And I have kept most of my efforts directed at the entertainment world, or I should say the film world. So I've done, of course, many stories for Variety, doing the, advising for the Udine Far East Film Festival and other festivals here and there. And, doing translating and just doing all kinds of stuff, just to keep, the wheels turning financially, right? So it's not been easy, but yeah, I've been a freelancer, basically since 1986. So yeah, I just kept doing it.
And since you mentioned Udine, can you tell me a bit about your collaboration with them, with Udine Festival?
How did that start?
Yeah, and how it is now.
That started, back in the year 2000, when they were planning their second edition. They started as just a film festival, or they had a program of Hong Kong films that was very successful. So they said, from year 2, we're going to do this with other films from the region. So somehow they got my contacts, and they just emailed me out of the blue, saying, would you like to help us with our program on Japanese films? I said, oh yeah, whatever I can do. So it ended up being kind of a small section at the beginning. I think maybe 3 or 4 films from Japan, and back then it was fairly easy. You just call up a distributor and say, we're doing this film festival in Italy, can we show your film? And they usually say, oh really, yes, of course. Nobody else was interested in some of these films at that time. Some of the companies were coming to us, saying, is there any way you can show our film? So that was the advantage of being like the the first festival, I think, in Europe to say, okay, we're not going to go for the art films so much. We're not going to go for the the horror films and the sci-fi films. We're going to go for all kinds of films, but mainly films that people, ordinary film fans are going to go and watch in the theaters. The films that Asians themselves watch. So that led us to like dramas and comedies and some of these more mainstream films that were overlooked by the Cannes and Venice and Locarno and so on, right?
And from the many people you have interviewed, from Japanese directors and actors, is there someone that truly stands out for you? Someone really special?
That stands out? Yeah, there are several. I mean, just going over this thing, I'm amazed at some of the what can I say, comments that people have made, some of the stories they've told. Yeah, there are many I could pick up. But okay, I would say like one that made a big impression on me was Juzo Itami. Okay, I interviewed him not long before he died, and of course there's some controversy about how he died. Did he commit suicide? Was he killed by the Yakuza? But I went to his apartment, and this was of course after he had been attacked by gangsters. He made a film like parodying gangsters, and 5 of them attacked him like right outside his apartment. And one of my questions, of course, was how did that affect you? And he said, it just made me like more resolved to keep doing what I'm doing. Like and he told me, like, I came in the Genkan, in the entryway. My wife was there. I'm bleeding from all these stab wounds, and of course she's shocked and shut the door, and the Genkan started filling up with blood, that sort of thing, right? So I was just so like impressed by that. What can you say? A strength of character, like he's going to keep doing what he's doing no matter what. And he was also very a very bright guy about many things. He was like an actor and an essayist before he became a director. He became director at the age of 50, so he was already what can I say, like a TV celebrity. Very articulate guy. And he would say things like about Japanese society, and the relationship between Japanese men and women, things like that impressed me. Is not just the average film director, something else going on here. So he was one that really stood out. And another one was of course, Kurosawa. Well, of course, there are two Kurosawas we can talk about, right? But Akira Kurosawa, who I interviewed very early on for a film he did with Richard Gere, about the Nagasaki bombing, right? He gave me an hour and a half in his house, which was about an hour more than I was expecting. And again, quite forthcoming. And it was one of these things like, in various ways, like I told stories about it again and again, but I thought that's one of the big reasons I came to Japan, to meet somebody like Kurosawa, period. I thought, oh, never going to happen, right? But there I was in his house, like talking to him about, his philosophy of filmmaking, about, filmmaking in general. I asked him, are there any films you don't think you can make? And he said, yeah, if I tried to make a film about the emperor, who at that time was, of course, Hirohito, who was emperor during World War II, they'd kill me. Say, what? That sort of thing, right? They wouldn't allow it. It'd be risking my life to do something like that. So this was back in the early 90s, but anyway, that stuck with me. So things like that, where the director, actor, whatever, is not just kind of repeating a script. Of course, they're usually trying to publicize a movie. Yeah, I understand that. But if I can get them off the script, talking about something a little more personal, a little more general, usually comes out more interesting.
Okay, you mentioned two interviews, and for both of them, you went to their house. Is that something common when you interview people in Japan? Do you go to their house to interview them?
For a director interview, no.
No, okay.
It's very uncommon. I would say nowadays, it's very rare, because it's always done through the public, the PR company, right? And they'll say, okay, come to our office, or usually it's the distributor's office, so you're in a kind of sterile room.
Okay,
Back in the day, okay, Itami invites me up to his apartment. Okay, fine. I'm in his apartment. I'm looking at his PC. I'm looking at, the kind of vodka he's drinking. All this stuff, and then I reflect later, from that apartment, he went up to the roof of the building and jumped off. Okay, I was there. I mean, and Kurosawa, the same way. I mean, this is where he lives, up in his study, and seeing pictures of his wife and, that sort of, the awards that he won, and that sort of thing, right? So it is quite different when you get into that private space, but it's hard to do now.
And how would you describe the state of the Japanese movie industry nowadays?
The state of it now?
Yeah.
Actually, you can look at it in two ways. Okay, from the box office perspective, it's not doing too badly at all. You have the pandemic. Pandemic really, of course, affected cinema worldwide. In Japan, was really hit hard. I would say the first year of the pandemic, box office went down pretty sharply. But okay, they recovered, more quickly than Hollywood, more quickly than a lot of places. People started going back to the theaters, well, especially the multiplexes, to see Japanese films. The Hollywood films were pretty much, they were not being distributed, delayed, for whatever reason, right? So the percentage taken by the Japanese films, of the whole box office went up to like 70–80%. Wow, wonderful news, right? But on the other hand, you have the reality that, for many filmmakers, it's very, very hard to make a living at this business. They're on the bottom, which is, what can I say? Like they're the people, making films for Toho, making, TV dramas, whatever, right? Big names. They're doing okay, of course. Yeah, they're making a good living at it. But many people, whose names are quite talked about abroad, innovative young filmmakers, et cetera, they're struggling financially, right? And so you have like kind of a two-tiered system, and the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, that sort of thing, right? And then of course recently, I would say since the Me Too movement came out several years ago, you have more awareness that working conditions in the industry are far from ideal. People are being overworked. They're underpaid, of course, but they're also being overworked. They're being harassed, power harassment, sexual harassment. All that is coming out, one story after another. And, having, observed this from the sidelines for a long time, I would say, yeah, it's long overdue. Something definitely has to change.
So it was like that from the past, this whole thing that blew out now, like with Sion Sono and the other guys.
Oh, you mean
yeah, have you witnessed it, let's say, that these people...
working conditions?
Yeah. And the treatment of women, let's say, yeah.
I would say it's never been easy because, what can I say, the Japanese film industry is quite old. They started making films here like when the Americans did, when the Europeans did. They've been making films here for 120 years. But they were never quite, what can I say? I mean, they never got to the level of Hollywood. Maybe a few people were driving the expensive foreign cars and smoking the big cigars and that sort of thing. But most people, no, they were living pretty frugal lives, as in the film business, right? I mean, it's never been so different that way. But I think in the past, you had unions. Okay, that was one of the big movements to come out, after the war. Okay, we have the Toho Union, we have the Toei Union, we have the Shochiku Union. All these big studios, had to contend with union activism back in the day, right? So, but that's pretty much, with the collapse of the studio system, that's all gone. So unions have no, you have organizations that represent, say, the script writers or the directors, that sort of thing, right? But they're not unions in the sense that most people think of as unions, right? So it makes things a lot harder. Like, who's really controlling the amount of time people spend on the set? They're there 24 hours a day. When push comes to shove, right? There's no regulation about that whatsoever. With the independent films, especially.
Yeah. And being so many years...
Maybe I'm getting off the topic.
No,
your
it's
topic.
Essentially, that's what I asked. No, you're on top. But have you ever felt it, like in your line of work, in your working environment? Have you ever felt that you are being overworked, like not so nicely paid?
Yeah, I mean, people, what can I say? I mean, they're Japanese, right? So they take a kind of pride in being overworked. Oh, we're working so hard. Wow, we're here as a group. We're going to push through and get this film made. And I've been on sets, and just observing, like, wow. I mean, I could never do that. I'd be in the hospital. I'd be on my back. But of course, they're younger, they have, the energy, the desire, the ambition, to do it. And yeah, I applaud that. So in a way, like the system is taking advantage of that. All these young people, really wanting to, live out their dream of making films. And okay, live out your dream, but you're gonna, be working on this indie film, like no rest, crap food, abuse from the director, for the, your seniors on the set, all that. So in a way, they're being taken advantage of. So it's kind of a contradiction. Like, you need the passion to make the films, but on the other hand, at the end of the day, you hope to make a career out of it. You don't want to be just doing this until you burn out in your 20s and try something else. So people like Koji Fukada. Who's the other one? Anyway, they've made statements about this, saying, we have to change the system here. So yeah, I totally applaud that.
And from the latest generation of Japanese filmmakers, the ones that say that have only 1 or 2 films now, is there someone that stands out for you?
Among the younger directors?
Yes.
Wow, I would say, I mean, he's not so young anymore, and everybody knows who he is by now, but yeah, Hamaguchi. Please, I mean, I was, thinking, okay, from the time I saw his film, oh yeah, Happy Hour.
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour, yeah. So I think I've lost my video, yeah. Okay, here we go. I see you again. Yeah, Happy Hour. 2015, 5-hour film. I thought it was amazing. Can I sit through this? Oh, I was absorbed by it. I was enthralled by it. So I knew from that point, okay, he made other films before that, but I thought, okay, this is somebody to watch. And he came through with, of course, Drive My Car, Wheel of Fortune and Fantasy. To me, both masterpieces, 1 year. So, somebody like that just comes out of nowhere and suddenly, so he's right up there, for me, like, I mean, not just for me anymore. The world puts him right up there with, the other big directors who have been around for years and years and years. Kitano and Kurosawa and Kawase and Koreeda, the 4K directors. Yeah, he's definitely up there now.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, and now
so there are always people coming along like that. I keep an eye on, and then hoping they're going to make their breakthrough, and then once in a while it happens. Yeah.
Okay. And now you have your own movie coming up, Convenience.
Yep. Yeah, I have my own movie coming out.
Right? Tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, it's something I wrote. I wrote a story back in 2015. I was sitting on the train, going to some job, some interview probably, or some screening, and just had this idea, what if there was a world with only a convenience store? In other words, you're put into the situation, like the hero is in the situation where he only sees the convenience store. There's nothing else around. Can he live? Yes, he can. I learned that after the the earthquake and tsunami and reactor meltdown back in March of 2011 in my own neighborhood. The shelves were just emptied out one day in Tokyo. Okay, where do I go for like bread and milk? I went to my local convenience store where the owner or the manager knew me, and he said, "Oh, well, you got to come like 5 in the morning. That's when we get the deliveries. I'll make sure you get." I said, "Okay." For me, this became like the oasis in the desert, the food desert of Tokyo, right? And I thought, wow, like convenience store, it's a very unique, well, it's not unique. Of course, it came from America, but the way the Japanese have developed it is very Japanese. I mean, everything is constantly renewed, you know, new products all the time, but you know, you have all the basics. You know, you have the, not just bread and milk, but all the stuff, you know, even clothes, razors, everything you need just to survive. I thought, okay, put the guy in this world, and he got but is that all he wants? So his dilemma is he can live there indefinitely, okay? But is that all he wants? And what does he want? So I thought another influence was like Dante's, you know, Divine Comedy, which is maybe not used in movie references too much, but anyway, you have Dante with, you know, hell and purgatory and heaven. You know, the hero goes through all three. And I thought maybe for me, the most interesting is purgatory. Because in hell, you're hopeless. You're never going to get out of there, right? In heaven, you've got everything you want. You're with God, you know, you're with the angels. But in purgatory, you have to work through all the crap that got you there to get out, you know. So my hero is in that kind of dilemma. Like he has to figure out, you know, how to get out of there. And maybe I'm going on too long about this, but anyway, that's the kernel of it. And I wrote a, you know, a plot, well, actually a short story, ended up being about 20-some pages. And I pitched it to a director I knew, young director. And I thought he had the right mentality, and he read it, and said, oh, this is cool, I like it, you know. And I had a producer also, and maybe I shouldn't name names here, but he also liked it. So the three of us got together and said, okay, we'll make this thing. But it turned out that the director couldn't get his head around how to write a script. Okay. So months passed, you know, and I finally sit down with him and said, you know, what have you done with it? He said, I'm sorry, I haven't done anything. Zero, you know, like nothing, right? After a year, what am I going to do? So I went to Satoshi Miki, who I had known for a long time. I admired his sense of comedy. Okay. You know, I programmed a section of his films for Udine back in 2009. I brought him over for that. Then we had this relationship. Well, I just wrote him an email saying, you know, would you please take a look at this and tell me like what I should do with it? You know, is there anybody, you know, just kind of what, help me. What's your advice? He came back like the next day saying, I want to make this as a film. So I said, oh my God, you know, that changes everything. Now it's just like this young indie director, it's this established older director. And I can't make this thing for nothing anymore. So, you know, the next, you know, we met and we talked about it. How are we going to do it? So for the next 5 years, you know, I was trying to get, you know, the money together, the talent together, all this stuff together, right? And we don't have, I could be here for another hour talking about that, but finally, you know, Miki, I got a good producer, and Miki said, okay, I'm going to sit down and write the script. Okay, he had all these other projects he was doing, right? And he wrote the script. We had a producer that knew what he was doing. He got some great talent attached to it. You know, Atsuko Maeda and Leo Narita, you know, two of the, you know, best young actors in Japan today, right? And you know, we got the money together, and that's another long story. Like that's the biggest struggle, getting the money, right? But yeah, we finally got the budget, and the wheels started turning. So last December, you know, they went into production, and it's going to be premiering at the Fantasia Festival in Montreal on at the end of, or pardon me, can I say this? Beginning of August, maybe the 1st or 2nd of August.
Oh, really? This year? Oh, okay, yeah.
This year, and then in Japan, it opens on August 5th. like 1, 2, one right after the other. So yeah, it's happening.
So are you ready to read
The miracle? Like, thank you, God, right? But yeah, it's happening. Huh?
So are you ready to read the reviews of your film this time? Someone else reviewing your film. Are you ready for that?
Am I ready for what?
To read the reviews now, yeah.
Yeah, good point, yeah. Actually, half jokingly, right? If they don't like it, it's the director's fault. If they like it, it's to my credit, right?
Okay.
If they like it, it's my film again. But yeah, what can I say? I mean, once it's in the director's hands, and you just have to trust the director.
Yeah,
that's what it comes down to, right? Because some directors will take a property, whatever it is, manga, short story, and try to be very faithful to it. Just taking the dialogue kind of directly out, kind of rearranging it a bit. But Miki is not like that. I knew that from the beginning. Like he told me, I'll fight with the the writer. If he wants his vision, like transferred directly to the screen, it's not going to work, because it's got to be my film. And if I have to fight him, I'll fight him. But that's the way it is. See? And I said, I'm not going to fight him. I want to see what he comes up with, his take on it. So, the film he ended up making was quite different in terms of, the plot development and that sort of thing. But, the essential, the feeling of it is still there. So I think, okay, somehow, my vision, whatever, survived, in the finished film.
Okay.
Great.
Well, okay, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for being here, Mark, in ASEAN Movie Palace interviews.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, okay. So thank you very much. And
yeah, thank you, and I appreciate it. And let's keep in touch. Yeah,
definitely.